Welcome back to Von Blues Boxing, man. What's going on with everybody, man? So today I wanted to give my predictions for the big fight this Saturday. Pretty good card too, also nice co-main event, but I'm gonna do a video for the co-main event on his own. Brian Castano versus Jermell Charlo. This is the rematch. We seen the first fight, I think, was it December, fellas, or November? It was, last year. It was for the 4 belts at 154 pounds, undisputed fight. We seen controversy, a very, very close fight. We seen that Jermell Charlo and Brian Castano, went tit for tat, and there's some controversy because, there's a lot of people out there that think Brian Castano won because Brian Castano landed the more punches, more power shots, and some people just thought he just won the fight. And then there's some who thought Jermell Charlo won the fight, or it could have went either way. But this is the beautiful thing about boxing, is that here we got another chance to have the rematch. So for somebody to just, basically, kill this off. So one, we have a winner. So that's a good thing that's happening. The fight did get canceled. They had some problems with, scheduling the fight, finding a venue for it. But they finally found one. It's at the Dignity Health Center in Carson. It's this Saturday, and yeah, man, so it's gonna be a good, the first fight was good. I expect the second fight just to be as good or even better. You know what I'm saying? In the first fight, from watching it, I think both fighters had success throughout the fight, and it could have went any way. Because if you look at Brian Castano was able to put pressure on Jermell Charlo, getting fighting off the back foot, you know what I'm saying? He was able to land some good shots and things of that nature. But the only thing with Brian Castano would start too late sometimes to me. He would just, he would do it towards the last minute of the round, and that was the thing I seen for Brian. He just started a little too late. And for me with Jermell, the thing I seen with Jermell in the fight is Jermell just didn't use his footwork. You know what I'm saying? That's something I felt like he got to make sure that he work on and implement more in this fight, is the footwork. Circling outside the lead foot, circling away, taking little angles, making sure he stays away from the ropes, turning Brian Castano. You know what I'm saying? Because that's, that was a big thing for him, because it's like anytime he got towards the back of the ropes, Brian Castano was kind of predictable, and he would just, once Brian Castano got Jermell close to the ropes or even on the ropes, he's just gonna attack. Then that's when the attack was gonna come. And it was a little predictable by Brian Castano, but he had success doing it because Jermell Charlo just, I don't know if Mel was just too much looking for the counter shot, because that's why I watched that fight, because I watched it a couple of times, and that was one thing. Jermell, I felt like, was looking, he would back up to the ropes, and he was just looking for that big counter shot that, it ain't gonna come all the time, especially with a guy like Brian Castano with that height and, his ability to get inside, and, it's a little harder to catch a guy that's shorter like that, because Brian Castano changes levels a lot. So, it's not easy to hitting the guy who bobs and weaves and changes levels on you all the time. It ain't easy, because you gotta think, because you make that one mistake, he's gonna counter you, and you more than likely gonna get caught with a good shot. Even if it don't hurt you or nothing, it's gonna be a good shot. So, I was just watching the fight, and I think the keys for both fighters in this fight, for Brian Castano, I'm gonna start with Brian Castano first, is to start faster, Brian. Don't look so towards just stealing the rounds and kind of, stealing around. Look to start earlier. You know what I'm saying? That's the key, to start earlier. Get after Jermell Charlo earlier. Put the pace on him. Let him feel that energy, because Jermell likes to fight at a controlled pace. Jermell likes to fight at a controlled pace. Get him out of his comfort zone. That's going to be key. Another thing for Brian Castano in this fight, I think another key, is for him not to load up on his punches so much, because I felt like he was just looking for the big counter too much at times in this fight. I felt like he was just looking for the big counter shot, He's loading up on his punches. You know what I'm saying? Just letting his hands go with some volume. And, that big punch would have landed, because if you're throwing 3, 4, 5 shots, that punch is going to land. Now, it's not as always easy, but, that's the key, one of the big things. Brian Castano can't look to land that big counter shot so much in this fight. Another key for him in this fight, for Brian Castano, is to use the jab a little bit more. I know he's a shorter fighter, and I knew Castano was worrying about that overhand right or that cross coming from Jermell Charlo, because Jermell Charlo got a excellent overhand right, and he's got an excellent overhand right and cross right. Like, he catch you with it, he can stun you and hurt you. You've seen it many a times throughout his career. So that's the one key for me, though. Brian Castano, use your jab. Give, Jermell Charlo something to think about when you step in through the front door. Because, I mean, of course, Brian Castano gotta, he's got to cut the ring down and cut the distance, because Jermell Charlo is the taller, longer fighter. That's just, that's common sense when it comes to boxing. So, of course, he's got to do that. But he's got to bring a little bit more when he's coming through the front door. You know what I'm saying? But, that's the keys for me with Brian Castano in this fight. Now, the keys for Jermell Charlo in this fight, of course, use your footwork. You know what I'm saying? Like I just said, I'm repeating myself, but use your footwork. You know what I'm saying? Circle out. Keep the fight in the center of the ring. Like, that's important for Jermell Charlo, because when he keeps the fight in the center of the ring, it's a lot easier on him against Brian Castano. We've seen that. He was able to keep the distance, not get hit with the big counter, and he was able to land some shots. So that's one of the keys. Another key for me with Jermell Charlo, more body punches. Now, maybe the hooks to the body, because how low Brian Castano can get, he can get a very low center of gravity, and, he's a shorter fighter. It's harder to hit him in his body. I think the key is just throw straight punches to the body. The jab to the body, the straight right hand to the body, straight punches to the body. You know what I'm saying? Because he's got to have a little more body work, because he's got to give Brian Castano something more to think about, because Jermell didn't throw a lot of body punches in that fight. He threw some, but not to the point to make Brian Castano give him something a little extra to think about. That's the key, one of the keys in the fight. And another thing that I watched in the fight, when I seen the uppercut, when Jermell Charlo would throw the uppercut and land, he hurt Brian Castano. I think, what was it, twice or one time? He hurt him twice with that uppercut. So look to throw the uppercut. I know you're worried about that counter coming up over the top, that counter overhand right or that counter overhand left, but that's the key for Jermell Charlo in this fight. That's one of the big keys. Look to throw that uppercut, because you hurt him, Jermell. But now it's time to give my predictions for this fight. I gave you the keys. I gave you what I thought about it. Now it's time to give you my predictions on this fight. I think this fight is going to be similar to the first fight, guys. I truly do. I think that both fighters are going to try to implement different things and little different game plans they work, but I think it's going to be similar to the first fight. But the thing in this fight, I think Jermell Charlo is going to catch Brian Castano again, but this time I think he finishes him. I think he's more composed in this fight, and I think that Jermell Charlo finds the way to get Brian Castano out of there this time. He doesn't leave it in the hands of the judges, and neither does Brian Castano want to. I think it'll be similar to the first fight, but I'm going with Jermell Charlo, 9th round TKO. That's just my predictions. I just think before that knockout comes, or before the stoppage comes, I think that it'll be very similar to the first fight. Very similar. Now, yeah, you see a little difference, but I got a little something on my teeth. It'll be similar to the first fight. So, but this time around, I think Jermell hurts Brian Castano again, and this time he gets him out of there in the 9th round. That's my opinion on it, and that's what I'm going for. Now, I'm not under no illusion that Brian Castano can win this fight. I'm under no illusion that he can. He has the ability and he can pull it off, but I just think Jermell is going to find a way this fight. And I think he's got a little bit more that he can change than Brian Castano could change in this fight. But that's my predictions. Jermell Charlo, 9th round TKO stoppage, and becoming the undisputed 154-pound champion. But that's it, and that's all, man. Y'all check out that fight Saturday on Showtime. Brian Castano, Jermell Charlo 2 for the undisputed 154-pound belts. Y'all be good. Y'all be safe. Von Blues Boxing. I'm out.